Well, hi there, folks. My name is Jerry Bleeker, and I've been meaning to do a Google Classroom review for quite some time. I teach in Prince George, BC, Canada, pretty much smack dab in the middle of the province. And one of the things I was charged with was to take Google Classroom out for a spin. And my backstory on this is I'd actually been using um, a lot of Google services in a what I think is quite a smart fashion. Whenever myself or my students had been using these services, we did our best to um, make it anonymous. Our users set up in our Learn 57 domain, which kind of more or less looking at here, are they have avatars. So, with the exception of me, it's okay with my information being online. I'm Jay Bleeker at learn57.ca. There's the big secret. But my students are all different avatars. And with an affinity for Star Wars, I decided, what the heck, let's give them all Star Wars names. And we gave them fictitious login credentials, basically just numeric sequences. And the students are their Star Wars selves. So we set up two classes. I run a program called eCampus Biology. And what that is it's a flip program. So it's ideal for this technology, I believe. I'd been using Moodle, and I still do to a certain extent. And I was really, really happy to take the Google service out and really start it up. It is quite magnificently simple. Creating material is as simple as adding assignments. You can post questions, you can post materials. I think in another video, I'll get into that in a lot more detail. This is just an introductory video. I like that material in Google Classroom that is added is organized around topics. So for example, if you take a look at the structure of Google Classroom, it's been set up really from introduction to unit mentality, and each one of these units is a topic. So for example, if I decided to create an assignment, and Google Drive envisions the creation of assignment, I see it much more for resource sharing. It always wants to do a percentage, for example. But if I was going to add a new topic, for example, I've got phylum Arthropoda coming up. So let's say this is Unit 6. And I usually do a description about what arthropods would be, but I didn't put it in yet. If you look up at the top, you'll see it actually has started to create a category. Now, admittedly, I would have liked to be able to move these things around myself, but as soon as you set up your topics, and I have, this topic is coming up, so I'll say that it's, actually this would be Unit 7, Arthropoda, and I want it to go to the bottom of the list. So it goes in order of topics you create. So I'll create a topic, and I'll say Unit 7 Arth. Can't spell. And I put this as ungraded because it's informational material for now. And I would put in a summary of arthropods here. You can set a due date for the length of the unit. I consider the unit an assignment. You can say when it needs to be done by, and that will show up in your calendar. For a fictitious example, I'll say, I'll just put down the 21st, and I'll say assign. Now, as long as my topic is in place, keep your eye up here, you will see this will actually move. So, as I go down to the bottom, Unit 7 Arthropoda shows up at the bottom of the list. And this material is quite easily editable. Typical vertical menu in Google. You can rename, etc. And what to my eyes appears but the move up and the move down, which apparently I hadn't been paying attention to for a very long time. I've been doing this in order. You learn something new every day. Now, when you open up an assignment, for example, say with the Arthropoda unit, it implies that students will have assigned, they've been assigned an assignment. This isn't how I've been using Google Calendar, Google Classroom. When students do their research in my flipped classroom, they will click on this and say that they've turned in their work. Let's look back on a previous unit, for example, a little bit further back, King and Protista. So For example, research here on our friends, students are still saying that they've turned it in. And when it comes to the material that I'm putting in Google Classroom, I'm putting in, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. I'm putting in my YouTube lesson material. I've created screencasts for the entire lesson. I imagine some instructors would be putting in other video material, etc. I like to put in note blanks, for example, these, and if there's anything else you want to put in here, for example, the summary of the Probus Kingdom as a PDF, I threw that in as well. It's quite handy, and I like how you just click in space and it opens and closes. I saw in my view of Google Classroom that setting up a research assignment was a great idea, and that I like to put in links to other things. These can be YouTube videos. These can be links, which is, for example, what you see down here. Web links, that is. I like that structure. Online quizzes. There's some great stuff still out there from McGraw-Hill and the like. Biology Corner, big ups to Biology Corner. They do such a great job. And these are self-grading quizzes, so that's pretty neat. And because it's a flipped class, what's a little bit different is I like to do project-based learning. So this is something of my own device. I have them do biomedical scenarios. And for Chapter 20, we looked at protist diseases. So if you're dying to see it, it looks like this. And that looks a lot like Tony Stark's father, Iron Man's dad. But these are the biomedical scenarios that I created, and I have students figure out what the disease is and how they're going to treat the patient. 7 criteria, and then they get different medical scenarios. And students eat this up because it's project-based. They have to debate. They have to figure out what's wrong. And in a project-based learning environment, some students like to make videos. Other students like to do Google reports. And they will use, they'll use Google services and share back with me. They do that. But I get information in all sorts of ways. I get podcasts and whatnot. Being in this Google environment, and I'll just click the menu here, I have, as I say, I have the 2 classes. And there's things that I find that I'm using more than others. Just creating the structure. Typically one of these units, as I kind of piece it together, takes between a half an hour and 45 minutes thereabout. But I was able to use material that I had and the structure and the sequence I was using in Moodle. So I was more or less just sort of creating a new yellow brick road from my old yellow brick road of resources. The one thing I do want to point out, Google has something called Stream. So I posted out to my students today that their marks are available. So they should go check them out. And Stream is a very busy thing. It's everything that you do sort of gets reported in Stream. For example, that arthropoda link that I just created. I advise that you, if you go to share something here with your class, I don't need comments. These are sort of announcements to me. I like announcing things, that I've updated the marks and the test has been moved, for example. That's good. That's a positive use of this. I just kind of go straight to classwork. What's really interesting is students can have a copy of Google Classroom on their phone. And there is an app for Google Classroom, and I'll just show you an image here because I can't really call it my phone, but Google Classroom on the phone is literally Google Classroom. It looks the exact same way that the web page does. And if you send alerts, they're getting them like announcements. It's fabulous. Just serving just a quick web image here, it's brilliant. It's a very, very good tool. And this is a good example of what I would say. Things that are going on in the classroom are just showing up in the app on your iPad. Because Google Classroom runs in the web the same way it runs on devices, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It's positively great. So enough said about that. The people in my classroom, I won't click on this tab, but this is where all the Star Wars names exist. if you come over to the wand here of Google Apps, one thing that if you have your school district needs to sign up for Google to have access to these tidbits, right? When your school is signed up, then you will see the Google Classroom app, and adding a class is fabulous. You just need a class code, and that is primarily it. And then you have to accept the class code on the other end. Once the code is generated, you can add students to your class, and poof, your students can self-populate. I gave the students the code, but they had to be added to the domain. So with my previous class code that you could see, you have to be a member of the domain literally to get in as a user. So that was quite instrumental, and I really liked how that worked out. As I say, I have the two iterations. I have eCampus Biology 11, eCampus Biology 12. And they're just themes of each other. I was very happy with how well I've managed to get this sort of homogenized. Same sort of thing. Research is an assignment. Materials, handouts, things like that. Quizzes, just as before. Some great Wiley and Biology Junction material here. So Google Classroom is a very good unifier. Looking at the calendar, let's see which one we have. There we go. So this is the calendar for my grade 11 class, or my grade 12 class. My grade 11 class is turned off here. Click this and it folds up. And you can see the long tracks of assignments here. And tests, I wish that the students saw the same color that I portray here, but they don't. They see these as sort of a uniform color on their end. The reproductive system test, one of the things that I really like about putting or using Google Calendar with the students is I like to say what all of the criteria are for a test, and there's a fair bit here. This is the reproductive system test for BC Biology 12. If you click on this, for example, you can add notifications, and that's really useful. This test has gone by, but notifications, doing 1 and 3 day notifications, for example, will put alerts on the students, the student users. So, for example, if they have an iPhone or an Android, they'll get a notification from Google Classroom that, hey, a test is coming up. Like, wow, that's quite amazing. It keeps them a bit more on track. I do the same thing with quizzes, and hopefully I've been good here. Here we go. 2 and 1 day notifications. Interesting that 9 a.m. I hear students saying they're getting notifications on their phones at midnight. I keep thinking, well, that's odd. I set it for 9 a.m. Sorry, I'm not trying to keep you up at night. But it's a very, very useful thing to calendar in this fashion. Now, before I used Google Classroom, I was using Google Calendar and just sharing a link to the calendar. So this is sort of old hat for me. But it's a very good way to communicate with your students. And you would have to hide from the details. To my surprise, I had a student say to me the other day that they didn't know that in the description, what was going to be on the test was showing up here. And I said, well, why else would I use it? They just thought announcing the dates was the whole point. But Google Calendar is great. This is the grade 12 version. I can look at the grade 11 version. There we go. And slightly different color schema, but click on today here. We've got a test coming up on, actually, let's go one more. Here we go. So this is a test coming up on the 4th, and all the information is here. Let's see if I was good. There we go. I put the notifications in. So, admittedly, you need to be on a Wi-Fi, or you hopefully, I'm not eating data on their phones. That's kind of one thing I don't want to contribute to. But Google Calendar is really, really useful. I would say that the portions I'm not using quizzes, and I'm not using questions, sort of a question of the day. But admittedly, I like to do these things live. Even though I run a flipped classroom, we have a very strong live element. go. Class settings are pretty easy to get at. When it comes to the stream, this is where I think teachers can post and comment. Students don't need to be commenting on the stream, for example. I thought I had that one set for the grade 12s, but none of my grade 12s have actually changed anything. So there we go. Of course, people will show all the students in the class, but I prefer to keep that sort of confidential. Now, for ease of use of Google Classroom, how long did this take to pick up? Well, the answer was not long. Now, admittedly, I had a background using, for example, using Google, and I also had a background with Moodle. And there's some work with the settings that can be a little bit something that I think you would pick up as you go along. The settings themselves are sort of secondary to a lot of what you're doing. What most teachers will do is they will go here to create, and they will want to create an assignment, and they will want to upload material. So, for example, if you are going to upload a document, and I'm looking for a source document on my computer, you could grab something, a screenshot, for example, and choose that. So things on your computer, right? If you were grabbing Word documents or things of that manner, you would select those files and upload them. And you're having, you have access to your drive, all of your auxiliary drives, whatever you need. And you upload what you need for your files. So that's pretty straightforward. You can also load, you can have access to things in your Google Drive. So for example, if I wanted to, if I uploaded what I call Idea Central, it's basically just medical scenarios. You could choose something that exists in your Google Drive, which is fine. This is recent. You could go to your drive, and if you've organized your drive, for example, I have Classroom here. Let's say I'm in grade 12 right now. So if I wanted to go to my subjects, I could go to biochemistry. Well, that was useful. Let's go back to Drive. And I could go, well, let's just say cell biology. I have a little organizing to do. But if I wanted to link to a lab or to the cell structures slideshow, or this is another of the Idea Centrals, I could go there. So organizing into folders is a very good idea. Google Drive, you're not restricted in your drive space. If you want to link to a website, right, just post your link in there and it will be added. It could be a little more flexible in adding a description of what that link is and why. Because if you go to add a link like that, if I say add link, you will just see, for example, like CNN.com. So that's not always useful as it should be. Now let's say, and I'll go to my, oh, can't spell my own name, very nice. So if I go to my own YouTube channel, and here we go, if I wanted to make a link in a progressive way to some of the videos, and admittedly mine are organized into playlists for, let's say, Biology 12, and I wanted a link at this point to, let's move down, let's say we're starting the nervous system. So I'll copy the link by right-clicking there, minimize this. If I wanted to post links to YouTube video content, all I have to do is choose this. And I'll just paste the link in there, click search, and there it is. So that's ready to go. And of course with these links, I like using my own content. There's other content, but I tend to thank people for their contributions, especially if, for example, the Amoeba Sisters are amazing, and I give them credit for the work that they do. It's fabulous. Now, this is an assignment, and the topic that would be coming up, in this case, the topic that makes sense is unit, let's see. I like to put in the unit. I'm not going to, I think we're up around Unit 8. And, oops, let's make it make sense. And as soon as you create that topic, this will go to the end of the list. As topics are created, this resource would go to the bottom. And this is essentially what I've been doing in my experience, the way I've been using this. I just won't bother with that. At the beginning of my class, I wanted to say what a flipped classroom was, and I explained about that. And I've got some video here about what my experience has been. I also have a digital textbook. This is from ck12.org, so it's an e-text, open source e-text. It's amazing. The students love to use it. It's one less thing that you have to carry home. With my video content and this, it's great. It's very much set up and very portable for the students. I find that at our school on the Wi-Fi that the students, they're on this public Wi-Fi. The students themselves are, they like their own devices. BYOD is their thing. Now, we have a laptop card, but they're more than happy to go through the research on their own laptop or their own iPhone or their own iPad. People like their own stuff, and it's been a good experience. When it comes to resource creation, I'm still getting a lot of hard copies, lots of paper being handed in. Even though students could use Drive, they can go to Drive, and you can share things. For example, if I wanted to share a resource as a student, I could make a new Google document, or I could upload a PDF. What is really awesome about Google Documents is here's a resource to share. Clicking on the share button, I find a lot of my students lock me out. They're quite cheeky that way. They will choose can view, which drives me crazy because I can't do anything with it. And I find myself writing down notes on a piece of paper and handing it back to them. So there's my identity. Oops. Not that I would share with myself, but they can share back. I tell them, well, make it so I can edit it, or at least so I can comment it, because I'd like to say things about the work you're doing. Advanced opens up the ownership information, and most times you don't need to do this. The students generally are sharing. Right now this is a private document. I'm the only person on the internet who can see it because it's mine. But if I wanted to invite people, I can invite people and say, you can come in. You just have to type their email address. And something that's not really well known is, yikes, is that you can invite people that aren't on, that don't have a Google account. So if I wanted to invite, I know this seems a bit strange, if I wanted to use my email address with the School District 57, this will send a link to a person so that they can view, comment, edit, and it makes the document shareable and editable, depending on what you choose, with the person you sent it to. So receiving that link, I'd be able to get into that document and contribute. I don't have to have a Gmail account, which I think is very flexible, act on Google's behalf. So I'll just hit cancel here. Generally, just sending the link to people that you want to contribute with works well, and you can add a little message here. Here's that document we've been working on. Got a good start. Well, there you go. Definitely not full sentences there. Right? A few things to know down here. Preventing editors from changing access. These are some advanced options, really, where the person who starts is the person who controls the mode of the document. For example, contributors can't invite other contributors, but that's something that you wouldn't see with the students. Generally, what they'll do is they'll invite their other Learn 57 colleagues here, their other Star Wars compatriots. I'm just going to say done here. Very useful, and I've been doing quite a bit of editing actually with some of my students' work and shared with me here. I've had very good interactions with the students on their work. I tell them to not put their personal content in the name of the document, and that's always a little bit of a battle. Drives me a little crazy. This student did do their work, and it's worked out quite well. You can see the activity levels, what they've been working on. I've put in comments on their document, etc. So very good environment. I find it quite simple. Even if I forget to put documents in folders like I normally would, this reminds me, or it keeps it well organized for me. Okay, so my first thoughts on Google Classroom, and admittedly, coming from a Moodle background, this is the easiest thing that I've ever used. Very intuitive, very quick to set up. It gets pretty much an A+ rating from me. I would like to sort of change the look of it a little bit. Sort of this green upon sort of teal look is a little bit blasé, but my first impression with Google Classroom is very positive. I do like it better than Moodle. When I use Moodle, I just have it set to guest mode, and I give out a guest code to the students. This is more controlled. The students are added to the class, but they had to be inside of the Google domain. So, sort of first thoughts with Google Classroom. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it wasn't too long. Have yourself a good weekend, and Mr. Bleeker out.